never actually been sat down and taught by your teachers, or you've never had a lesson on exactly how you work. Working is such a fundamental part of our lives. From a very young age, we're taught to work hard towards our goals, especially in revision and in school. We're always taught different things. We're taught about like plant cells in biology. We're taught about the quadratic formula in maths, but we're never really sat down and taught exactly how to work. Before you click off this video saying it's too boring or whatever, do you have any one of these symptoms? Do you A, revise the entire day but you still don't feel like you've done anything? Do you always see those students in class that revise a few hours a day but get the best grades and you kind of feel jealous of them? At least I used to do that. Or do you just not have time to spend on other things? Do you have to take breaks from the gym or whatever to concentrate on revision? If you relate to any of these three scenarios, this video is for you. This video is probably the most comprehensive guide I've ever made, and probably like the most comprehensive guide you've ever seen on exactly how to work. And it's basically going to be me summarizing this book over here, which is just the manual on exactly how you do something called deep work. And for the first time ever, probably in your life, you're going to be taught, or I'm going to try and teach you and explain to you exactly how you work productively so you get the best grades in just a few hours. If you don't know who I am a year 13 student in the UK studying A-levels, and the A-levels I'm studying are maths, further maths and physics. So these are the hardest A-levels. But I was never always academic, or I've always tried to be academic, but I was never always getting the top grades. Around 2 to 3 years ago, I was doing like the UK's exams called GCSEs. And just before that, I had just gotten really, really bad grades in school. I was trying to revise throughout the whole day. I remember in lockdown, in like the COVID-19 lockdown, I was just sat there trying to engage with the content of like GCSEs. I was trying to like memorize flashcards and everything. But when the actual exam came, like I never had anything to show from it. I don't know, it was always that one feeling where like throughout the whole day, I would tell my parents that I'm studying. But at the end of the day, I was just like, yeah, I've kind of done nothing. Yeah, I did like a couple of flashcards, but I'm not better than I was yesterday. If you kind of get that feeling, I wasn't better than I was the previous day, and I never really improved. So that meant that I just never got good grades in school, or I never got like decent enough grades. However, in I think year 11, at the end of year 11, I discovered like self-improvement. I discovered exactly how you work. I discovered like productivity content. And then from then on, I've read this book, I've implemented this in my life, and now I'm predicted the highest grades in these three hardest subjects at A-level. And I got close to all A stars in my GCSEs, including two of the hardest subjects that, in my opinion. I took GCSE English Language and GCSE English Literature. Basically like massive writing subjects. And this is going to be a weird point, but in a weird way, before this exam, I was talking to my friend about this the other day. I hadn't actually read like a proper book. Imagine that. I got a grade 9 in GCSE English Literature and English Language, but I hadn't actually read like a proper book before. And not knowing technically how to, like I couldn't really read books without pictures in them. However embarrassing that sounds. Like before this exam, I couldn't read without having pictures in books. But after understanding how deep work works, I then really just focused on doing the best deep work sessions possible. I focused on improving my work sessions in general, and then I got the highest grades in these subjects. But yeah, I think my personal transformation has been massive, at least for me. I'm way more fulfilled now knowing what I know about how to work, and hopefully you're going to get the same by the end of this video. By the end of this video, you will know exactly how you work and how you get better grades in school with less time. And this isn't going to be like some scam. Like I see a lot of YouTubers online say this and they give like generic advice. They're just like, oh yeah guys, just like be productive guys, or like, well, you use the Pomodoro technique guys. This is going to be like really in depth, as you can see from the length of this video, and I've really taken time to create this video. I think I've been hyping up on my own channel for a long time. By the end of this video, you should know exactly how you do deep work, and you should have the knowledge to go and get the best grades, basically. How you watch this guide. So, because you probably weren't taught this before. So how do you watch this? In my opinion, you should watch this like a Netflix documentary, or watch this like a movie. You should just like dedicate some time in your day and try and watch this in order. But I don't really mind if you break this down throughout the day or whatever. I don't really mind. The one thing I will say is that try not to skip around sections. I've basically followed this book structure, and also I've kind of thought about the structure of this video itself. And if you skip around, you're going to miss information regardless of like where you skip around to. So even if you look at a section and you're like, oh yeah, I kind of know this, it's beneficial that you actually watch through it, even if you don't want to do it right now, than just skip to the end of this video. But also throughout this video, I'm going to be giving like actionable steps or like some advice to you that I want you to do right now. So that's also kind of different with this video. I'm going to like ask you to get a piece of paper, write stuff down and stuff. And it would like, in theory, if you want the most out of this video, you should go and do that as well. But I don't really mind if like, you can theoretically like not do that step, but you're just gonna negatively impact your own knowledge and understanding. But yeah, that's how you watch this video. Watch this like when you're eating food or like when you're like at the gym or something. Introduction to deep work. What is deep work? Around 3 months ago, I had a A-level statistics big like mock exam type of thing. So statistics is a particular part of maths that's honestly just like words and like economics based. It's basically the worst part of maths in my opinion. And I kind of procrastinated doing like any revision at all for like the big mock exam on statistics until the actual day of the exam. So the teachers spent like 2 months teaching us the content, and also like we practiced in class and stuff, but I hadn't really been paying attention. And a day before the exam, I was like, oh my god, I don't know anything about stats in the exam. I didn't even know like the basics of like what statistics were. So what I did was, on the day of the exam, on the day of the actual mock exam, I woke up really early in the morning, and in 3 hours I learned everything in A-level stats. I learned 2 months worth of content in 3 hours. Now after I had gone and done the test, I got back my result and I got an A star in the test. I got 50 out of 60, I think. So I'm not like saying that you have to go procrastinate, but it was after that experience, I was really profoundly impacted by that, because I was like, I just did 2 months worth of, I did the third of the entire A-level in 1 morning. Deep work is a specific type of work that everyone should do. It's the contrary to shallow work. Shallow work is basically when you are doing low intensity work that doesn't really help your goals in any way, and you do that throughout the day. Deep work is different from that. It's very high intensity work for a shorter amount of time. And in the book Deep Work by Cal Newport, this one over here, he states that once you get really, really good at doing this specific type of work, you're able to produce more output or gain more in a 60 to 90 minute deep work session than someone else can do an entire day. Imagine that. You can do more work in just 60 to 90 minutes than someone else does shallow work for like 10 hours. That's really cool, right? Really, really think about that. You can save like hours and hours. You could invest that time into something else more productive, or like more recreational, or spending time with your family or friends, and also get better in like your desired goal. So you could get better grades with revising from 1 to 2 hours a day than someone else can for 10 hours a day. Of course, if the other guy is like not revising efficiently, doing 10 hours of deep work, if you do that, then like fair enough, you're gonna beat the first guy. But if someone else hasn't read this book or hasn't watched this video and they're just doing work however they do, like however like normal people do work, then you're probably gonna beat them with 1 to 2 hours of deep work. So this is a skill that's really, really important, but it hasn't really been taught to professionals or like even students or university students or like business owners at all. It's kind of like this niche thing that only a few very like productive people in the self-help like genre know about. And like I think Cal Newport says in this book as well, at the time that he made this book, he was like all of the top level CEOs, all of like the most successful people in the world, they do deep work. Like if you go and see Russell Brunson or who's the guy? I think I read a book about Jeff Bezos, and he also does these intense periods of time where he just focuses on work and then he just relaxes for the rest of the day. Now we're going to talk about some of the benefits you have when you do, or we're going to like clarify some of the benefits that we have when we do deep work. And the first one is you're just improved grades. If you're a student, which this video is designed for students, you're just going to get better grades if you do deep work. Even if you're revising less, which is the next benefit. Like, doing higher intensity work will give you more results. So yeah, you're just going to get better grades. The second advantage is you're going to have more time for yourself. You're going to have more free time when you do this kind of work. Doing deep work is harder than doing other types of work, but when you do it correctly, you're going to have more time to go to the gym, more time to spend with your friends, more time to go out. For me personally, ever since I've started doing deep work, I've been able to, even in year 13, in like A levels and everything, go to the gym every single day for 2 to 3 hours, just because of how I like formulate my daily routine. The third main benefit is kind of wishy-washy. You get more fulfillment and more focus whilst doing work. So you just feel better after doing deep work. Like, again, like, you've probably had those days where you've kind of been working the entire day, but you don't really feel like good after working. You kind of feel grey because you haven't really produced anything and you've wasted so much time. After you do deep work, after you like understand how to do it and everything, you're just going to feel more fulfilled and just happier when you do work and when you finish doing work than if you're doing any other type of work. One more thing I would say is that throughout my channel's history, so if you go and scroll down on the videos in my channel, I've always been implicitly just recommending the steps in this book, Deep Work. I've always been like, I've kind of like hinted at deep work, and this advice has actually caused a lot of students to get really good grades in their GCSEs, and I'm going to be like mentioning them and shouting them out in this section. The TLDR of doing deep work, there's no real disadvantages from doing this type of work. There's only benefits. You're only going to improve your life and get more free time for yourself if you start doing this type of work. Now we're going to go over exactly how you do deep work, and we've waffled on about like why it's good and everything. Now let's get into the meat of it. Why hustle culture exists. In the industrial age, so this is the age of like factories and everything, and everyone used to do labor by hand. In that age where like you used to have factory workers throughout London or like the US and everything, you were judged, or workers were judged based on whether or not they were doing the physical tasks or not. So for example, if you were in the factory line and you were like screwing bolts, if you weren't screwing bolts, then you were reprimanded, you were like told off basically. But when the work we do now is more intellectual, this same mindset seeps into our intellectual work as well. So now, like, if you're in like the library and you're not seen working, if you're just seen like relaxing, it's seen as a bad thing. But what we don't understand is that, or like what most people don't understand is that the mind and the body works very differently. For the body, yeah, of course, like if you're not doing work, then you're not like working. But for the mind, you can't focus intensely for a long period of time. You need to have like this sprinter's mindset. You need to do a high intensity sprint for a short amount of time and then spend the rest of the time like recovering from that and resting, as opposed to what a lot of people think of like working as, which is a marathon mindset, where they think that like doing a little bit of intensity, not going all in, but like doing it for a longer amount of time is going to help them more. But this isn't how the brain works. If you're really into this, your brain basically has like neurons in it when you like generate thoughts. When you do work, your like neurons fire off, and around the neurons there's something called a myelin sheath. It's basically like a fatty tissue which acts like a conductor. So you know, in like physics, when like a conductor is something that conducts or like helps electricity like flow through. So you have that around your neurons, and whenever you focus on something like intensely for a shorter amount of time, your brain basically trains itself to focus better, and it also increases something called neuroplasticity. I know that this is kind of like wishy-washy, but like whenever you focus for an intense amount of time, and it has to be like short, it generates more myelin, so you're just going to be better at thinking and learning. But you're also going to be more neuroplastic, which basically means that you're going to be able to focus more and you're going to be able to learn better and perform better. So that's like the sciencey reason as to why working for a shorter period of time but doing it at a higher intensity is better than doing the lower intensity for a longer amount of time. Step 1 of deep work: setting goals. So now we know exactly the benefits and like all of the waffle behind why doing deep work is good. You're probably already convinced. You're probably thinking, oh my God, just tell me how I do this deep work thing. And that's a good thing, right? If you're not convinced, go and rewatch the previous sections until you are convinced. Now, before I actually tell you exactly what you have to do deep work, we need to set goals in place for doing the work, because intrinsically doing work is hard. Like going and doing like intellectual work or going and working for a test or something is really, really hard. And if we don't have correct goals and the correct mindset put in place, we're just going to be demotivated. But if we do have like the correct goals and mindset put in place, we're going to be more motivated to do the work. So this isn't really how you do the deep work, but it's how you get more motivated for it. I'm going to go through some like mindset goal type of stuff just to help you be more motivated to do deep work. The actionable step I want you to do right now is I want you to get a piece of paper and a pen. Now we're going to go over the goals that we want to have to make us do the work. And this is divided into three main categories. We want identity goals. So I want you to make this as like a title on your piece of paper. So make identity goals, we want outcome goals, and we want lead measures. So have this as a title in your like piece of paper. So I'm going to go over each of them one by one. Identity goals. Identity goals aren't real like tangible goals you can achieve. They're more the identity you want to have to achieve the goal. So basically what I mean by this is when I was doing GCSEs, like the year 10, year 11 exams, I was really bad at English. But as soon as I, like in a weird way, as soon as I started just brainwashing my mind, telling myself that I'm good at English, I didn't really write this down, which I should have done. But if I just adopted the mindset of telling myself that I was sick at English, that I was really good at English. And in a weird way, I just started getting better grades, even without doing any work. My brain started acting in a way that was better for me to get that goal. So now I want you to have you probably have some goals in mind. You want to get good grades in your A levels. You want to get good grades in like an admissions exam. What kind of person do you have to become to achieve those goals? Maybe you're going to put, I make no silly mistakes. I'm extremely productive. It's basically you're creating your ideal character and you're pretending like you already have that characteristic. I know this sounds really, really wishy-washy, and if I was watching this video right now, I would just be like, bro, just tell me how to work. But this is really, really important. Your mindset is extremely important, and how you see yourself is very important and really influences whether or not you get the goals. You've probably seen this with people who get the highest grades in certain subjects. They already see themselves as like a good student in that subject. An example I like to give to like so many people is that if you take two students, one of them has like been predicted an A star in maths, and another person is predicted a D in maths, and they've already gotten D's and A stars in the past. But now if you teach each of them a completely new concept in maths, like a university level, none of them have ever heard of this topic at all. The A star student is more likely to do better. If these two students are then tested on this topic, the A star predicted student is more likely to do better on the exam testing that new topic. Now, why is that? Like, both students haven't had they've not heard of this topic before. So why does the A star student get better? It's basically because of the way he sees himself. He sees himself as a good student in maths, and therefore, this just it's really weird how it works, but this then motivates him to get better grades in that. If you want to read more about this, read a book called Psycho-Cybernetics by this guy named Max Wellmont. He goes over like the visualization, like the identity sort of mindset you can have to achieve goals. But basically, all I want you to do right now is just write down the character or the person you have to become to achieve your goals. The second title you've underlined is outcome-based goals. So these are the goals that we actually want to achieve. Now, this can be like, oh yeah, I want to get an A star in my mocks in maths A level. Or I want to get all 9s at GCSE. Or I want to get this particular score in my English language GCSE. Now, you can pick anything you want, but one thing I want you to keep in mind is you have to make these goals as big as possible. You want to make these kind of unrealistic. And the reason that I want you to make them really quite unrealistic. So, for example, if you're like a C student right now, say that you're going to get all A stars. The reason you want to have a big goal on this piece of paper is that a big goal will motivate you. So having the goal of all A stars as a C or a D student, yeah, fair enough, it's not like realistic, but like you're gonna get better if you aim higher anyways. So that's like the thought of getting all A stars is gonna motivate you more than just like saying, oh yeah, I'm predicted a B, so I may as well just not try it. Like in a weird way, aiming bigger will get you better results just because of that. You've probably already noticed this with like really top students. I was talking to this one guy the other day who got like nearly 100% in his further maths mock, and he wasn't happy with getting the highest in our year or whatever, or like getting one of the highest in further maths in our year. He wanted 100%. His goal before the exam was to get 100% in the test. Now aiming so high made him get an A star. Like he failed. He technically failed his goal by getting an A star. But I would rather fail my goal by getting an A star than just like get a B anyways. So I know that this may sound like really weird, but the main key point of making our goals right now is to aim as high as possible, just because of this like phrase of like, if you shoot for the stars, then you're going to end up on the moon. If you want to read more about this concept, read the book The Magic of Thinking Big by this guy named David J. Schwartz. Write down goals that excite you and big and unrealistic. I'm assuming that you're a student, so write down like the exam score you want to get in a particular exam. So you want to get like an A star in this subject. Now we've decided what our identity goals are and what our outcome goals are. Now we're going to go over probably the most important part of this goal setting process, which are lead measures. So lead measures are basically the things you do that are going to contribute and help you get to your goal. So what I want you to do now is under the lead measure section, which hopefully you've underlined as I told you in the actionable step, you want to put down every single, or like a bunch of actions that you can do to achieve your goal. So I'll give you an example, right? I wanted to get a grade 9 in my English language GCSE. So I would put down, one thing you could do is read loads of books to get more vocabulary. You could go and like read the dictionary, read the thesaurus, memorize words from the thesaurus. You could do loads of practice papers. You could do practice questions. You could go watch YouTube videos. You just list down a bunch of things that are going to help you achieve your goal. Now go and do that right now and pause the video or whatever. Now we're going to use something called the Pareto principle to basically identify the key actions that we want to choose from this list. So the Pareto principle is basically this, right? Imagine you're me, revising for my A-level stats mock, and you had 4 to 5 hours to revise the entire syllabus. Imagine you had 4 to 5 hours to get your goal that you want to achieve. What actions out of the list of things you could do would you do in those 4 to 5 hours? You probably wouldn't read the dictionary, right? If you wanted a grade 9 in English language and you hadn't started revising, you wouldn't start reading the dictionary to get better grades. You wouldn't go and watch YouTube videos. You wouldn't go and talk to your teacher. The only things you would probably do is just do practice questions and then just like improve those answers in the practice questions. Now, if you like circle like the things you would do in those like 4 to 5 hours before your exam, now cross out everything else in the list. So now we're only going to pick those 2 to 3 actions. And basically the point of this exercise was just to identify the key main actions you can complete to do your task. So just to clarify, we're not going to do anything else on that list except the 2 to 3 things that you picked out. So from now on, when you're going to revise for that exam or for that goal that you have, you're not going to do anything else on the list than those 3 things when you're doing the work, basically. So if you're revising for GCSE English language, now we're not going to do anything to do with this thesaurus. We're not going to read the dictionary anymore. We're just going to do the practice questions and improve on the practice questions. Now, I probably know what you're thinking right now, right? Like, this sounds so scary to leave everything else and just focus on this. And you're probably thinking like, oh yeah, like if I read the dictionary, I'm probably gonna like take in some words. I'm still gonna gain some advantage from doing that. Now, this mindset is called the any benefit mindset, and it's a big thing in like the self-development niche. It's basically when people think that by doing lower leverage tasks or doing things that won't really help them achieve their goal, they're at least going to get some benefit by doing it. And this is probably the mindset you have right now. But this is wrong. You waste so much time and so much energy in doing those things, and it kind of compromises the main goal itself. So if I was to dedicate some of my time to go and read the dictionary, it takes away time that I could have just been focusing on doing practice papers, which then therefore compromises my goal a little bit. And we don't want to lose out on this benefit that we get from just focusing on the main things that get us our goal. By the way, when we focus on these 2 to 3 main actions, these actions are called high leverage. It's basically when imagine a lever, right? A lever. If you have a big lever, you have a higher leverage, so you can push it up with more force. But a smaller leverage is something that doesn't really push up the lever that much. So if you have a really big handle on the lever, you're gonna require less force to generate a higher amount of force. If you have a smaller lever, you're gonna require a higher amount of force to generate a lower amount of resultant force. And excuse me for the the impromptu physics lesson, but this is basically what we're doing. We're gonna choose the main tasks that are gonna get us our goals the quickest, and we're only gonna concentrate on them. I know I've waffled on for a long time on this one section, but I really want to drill down that you're only going to do these few key components in doing your goals from now on. Imagine you are doing your GCSE revision for English. If you do want to read the dictionary, if you do want to go and talk to your teachers, that's counted as fun. That isn't counted as revision. So reading the dictionary is not counted as revision. You're going to take that away from your recreational time. That is not counted as deep work. The fundamental principle of doing deep work is one of the key components of it is choosing the right task to do, is choosing the right work to do. And by doing something that is smaller leverage and doesn't have such a high leverage will compromise your goal. Step 2, how to actually do deep work. Now we've gone over exactly the goals and identity we need to have in order to do the deep work. Now I'm just going to tell you exactly how you do this weird thing called deep work. And I'm just going to walk you through it. I'm going to kind of waffle on, but I think this waffle is very important because it's going to clear up some of your doubts on doing work. And I'm basically just going to walk you through exactly what you have to do. These are the 3 main components of having the best deep work sessions possible. Number 1 is a deep work ritual and a shutdown ritual. The second component is minimizing distractions. And the third component is accountability and scoreboards. Now I'm going to walk you through every single one in detail. Number 1, having a deep work ritual. A deep work ritual is basically a set of actions that you do every time you're about to do work. Whenever I sit down over here and I'm about to do work, I do these actions before I do that, and it just makes my session way better. And this is exactly what it is. I want you to get a diary or a notebook like this one, and you want to have these 3 things as a checklist. So I'll show you an example over here. For example, this is deep work session number 3. You can see it over here. Yeah, deep work session number 3. Now, on the checklist or on one of the actions you want to do, you want to have the knowledge of exactly what work you have to do in that session. So if I'm going to sit down and do work, before I start doing the work, I need to know exactly what I'm going to do or what I'm aiming to complete in this session. I'm not just going to, for example, if I'm revising further maths, I'm not just going to have, revise for your further maths exam. I'm going to have, go watch TL maths on De Moivre's theorem and then do these specific worksheets from alevelmathsrevision.com or something. I'm going to have exactly what worksheets I'm going to do. I'm going to have exactly the videos I'm going to watch pre-planned before I start working, because that takes away from your concentration in the deep work session. The second bullet point you want to have on your deep work ritual is the duration of your deep work session. So I always have either a 90 or a 60-minute timer. And yeah, basically the reason you want to have this is you don't want your work to seep into other areas of your life. So if you're working in the evening, if you don't have a defined amount of time you want to spend working, you're just not going to maintain that level of focus. So before I even start working, I know exactly how long I'm going to work for. And I also have it on my computer. I have a website called Pomodoro Focus. And basically I have a 90-minute timer on there. And I just click start before I start working. Every single time I start working, because it just like, it makes you something to look forward for. It's the same way as like, if you're doing a sprint and you don't know where the finish line is, you're obviously going to slow down. Like, even if the finish line is kind of close or far away, you're going to slow down because you don't know when to conserve energy and when to like go full power ahead. But if you know like the finish line is 100 meters in front of you, then you're going to like lock in and actually like go full steam ahead. It's the same thing that happens with like intellectual work. If you don't know exactly how long you're going to study or revise for, you're not going to maintain the same level of focus and intensity as if you just like have a timer. The second key component of doing deep work is minimizing distractions. So I'm going to speak more about this in the later section. But basically, you want to do something to get rid of the distractions in your area. So I close my door over there because like it's noisy in my house. I live in an Indian household, so everyone's like screaming all the time. So I close the door so I don't get distracted, and I like throw my phone away. Not literally. I just chuck it away somewhere else. And these two are mainly the distractions I have, and I have this on my deep work ritual session, so I know what I basically know what to do before I start working. And that leads on to my next point, which is the reason we have this is we want to have predictable patterns or predictable habits that won't affect our study sessions. We don't want like our alarm going off randomly from our phone, or we don't want us not to know what we're doing halfway through the session. We want to make our sessions as efficient and as intense as possible. And by having a checklist like this, I would personally recommend you have this on some kind of like cheap notebook or something. You can then, after you finish the deep work session, you can then check this off, and it gives you a little bit of dopamine by checking off like all of the stuff that you initially had planned. The second main part of this section is having a shutdown ritual. This is as important as having a deep work ritual itself. A shutdown ritual is a process of steps that you have after you finish your work. So when you finish your work, you basically want to make it really crystal clear in your mind that you finished doing work for that session. So what I do is I close all my tabs on my like work laptop. I close my laptop, and then I like tick off my my like deep work ritual like tasks. And yeah, that's a good enough ritual for me. You can do whatever you want. You basically want to make it as clear as possible that you're finished working to your brain, because you don't want to be constantly thinking about the work throughout the day. Because I've had this so many times where I'm like working in the night, and then I haven't done my shutdown ritual, and then when I'm like sleeping, I kind of just like think about the work, which is a really horrible experience, honestly. You just want to leave the thinking about the work to when you're doing the work. I know what some people try to do is they also have like, they write down "I am finished with the work" on their notebook. I personally tried that. I personally didn't really like it, but you can try that if you want on your like shutdown ritual. Basically, the fundamentals of these two things is that you want to have predictable patterns or like predictable actions that you do every single time you sit down and work, and every single time you finish working and get up. And this basically just makes your deep work session more efficient. The second main component of doing deep work is minimizing distractions. In the early 2000s, a university called King's College London did a study where they found that checking your phone whilst doing work has a bigger impact on productivity and your attention than smoking marijuana. Marijuana is like a class B drug. So literally doing some kinds of drugs are better for your productivity than just having a quick glance at your phone. Now this is insane, right? Checking your phone is such an innocent thing to do. It's like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna like check if I have any messages from like my mom or something. But it has such a big impact on your productivity. It's really hard to explain, or it's really hard to just rationalize that in your head. Just to like put it in numbers, you check your phone one time whilst you're working, it takes away your focus from your deep work session for about 20 to 25 minutes. So really think about that, right? If you're working for 60 minutes, nearly half of that time is gone by just quickly glancing at your phone just one time. It's insane how much your attention is gone after you just have a simple distraction around you. And that's why minimizing distractions around you is extremely important when you're doing deep work. And the two main ways you can minimize distractions is to create a productive environment around you. So I'll link it up here somewhere. I have a full guide on how you like make a productive desk setup designed for students. But also Like go watch that, and it basically tells you how to set up like an environment that's conducive for working. But also just having like I said in the previous section, having a quick little thing in your deep work ritual, wherein you clear out the distractions around you, and you just basically just like remove anything that's going to distract you in your work session, is also really important for minimizing distractions. I personally can't tell you what you're going to be distracted by. Maybe you're distracted by like a picture or something, or I'm personally distracted by like my phone. I keep on getting notifications, and I'm distracted by like noise and stuff, so I just close my door. But it depends what you're distracted by. Some people are really distracted by like having a messy room for some reason. I'm personally not really distracted by that, but if you are, then fair enough, go and clean up your room. It depends from person to person. I can't really tell you exactly what you're going to be distracted by. You should just kind of know that intuitively yourself and have that in your deep work ritual. The third main component of doing good deep work is having accountability and scoreboards. So now we've gone over exactly what you need to do before you're doing work, when you're doing work, and like exactly how to minimize distractions, basically how you work. Now this is more about like the progress you make when you're doing deep work, and having some kind of accountability and being motivated for that. The way the guy who wrote the book Deep Work describes having some kind of accountability is by having some kind of way of tracking how much work you do per day. So there's two main ways to have this, right? There's either a paper version. Imagine you do like 60 minutes of deep work. You can like have that as a tally each day, and then at the end of the week you can check how much hours of deep work you've done that week. Or you can have an Excel spreadsheet where you track exactly how many hours a day you work in that day. You can't just like do any sort of work. It has to be deep work, and those have to be like tallied in that spreadsheet. And what this does is, if you have some kind of accountability or some kind of way of seeing the amount of work you've been doing that's been like concentrated and like good quality work, this gives you a feeling of progress, which then motivates you even more. So in the self-development niche, we know that progress is the only and the main motivator for people. Think about this, right? When you get better grades, in a weird way, that motivates you to work harder than just getting like the A star. And I personally can say this for myself. The period of time when I was just like increasing my grade level I was way more motivated then than I am just like getting A stars right now. And in a weird way, I've kind of fallen off just because like I'm kind of complacent and I'm not really motivated. I'm not really going up anyway. So having some kind of accountability or some kind of way to track the amount of work you do per day is really important. So some of the advantages and disadvantages of the two main ways I recommended to you are that if you do it on paper, so if you like do it on paper and stick it up on your wall, that's what I used to do. I used to have like a big tally of how much deep work I did per day for every week. The only problem with that is that you can't really see you can't really see the long-term view. So I can't go and look at how much work I was doing like 3 months before. But you can do that on the Excel spreadsheet. But the good thing about having it on paper is that it's constantly in your face, or at least if I stuck it on my wall, it was constantly in my face, and I was constantly reminded of doing the work. Whereas on like an Excel spreadsheet, it's kind of hidden away and like you're not as motivated from it. So yeah, it's like you have to make your choice of what kind of way you want to tally your deep work based on your own personality and based on your own like preferences. But I personally use the Excel spreadsheet because I can see like a longer term view of how much work I've done each day. But also, that's what like that accountability and like tallying the amount of work you do per day is one part of this. But also, what I've begun like implementing recently is having an accountability partner. So basically me and like a group of other two mates, my mate Christian and Noah, we come together every single day and we just ask, like we tell each other that we're going to do like 3 deep work sessions or like 3 hours of deep work for the day in the morning. And then at the evening, we're just like, we basically hold each other accountable for that. So if one of us doesn't do the required amount of deep work per day, we're just like, yeah mate, like what's going on mate? And we kind of like scream at each other for that. And you may think there's like, as a student, you probably think that this is kind of cringe or whatever. Honestly, yeah, it is kind of cringe just coming together and talking about work. but it does really help you. Like, it's really helped me stay accountable, stay like disciplined to my routine when I've had accountability partners that have looked me like in the eyes and said that, yeah mate, like you haven't done the work that you promised that you were going to do, so it's just disappointing. So like, consider getting some kind of accountability partner. What I personally want to set up, like a longer term vision, is that I want to set up like a Discord community for this channel where like it's really tight knit and we can all hold each other accountable. People and like students who are like serious about productivity and stuff. But right now I don't have that. So go and find yourself some mate that can hold you accountable for the amount of work you do per day. But the main like takeaway from this section is just that you should have some kind of way of tallying and like keeping a score of how much work you do per day, especially if it's deep work, because that just motivates you in the future. So these are the key components of deep work. So these three things, if you have a ritual for deep work and shutting down, if you minimize distractions, and if you have like some kind of accountability and a scoreboard, if you implement these three things, you are better than most people at doing work in general. If you really try and implement these three things, you are like the top 5% of people in general who do work. Because no one's like, honestly, like no one's reading books on how to work. Like I have to be some kind of like, you have to be some kind of weirdo to sit down and just read about how to work, which I kind of am. But like, yeah, if you just implement these three things, you will be better than most people at doing deep work. Now I'm just going to go over like the general tips and like tricks that you need to keep in mind when you're doing work, and hopefully this will help you do more work and become more productive. So tip number one is attention residue and multitasking. Attention residue is basically when you're kind of left thinking about what you previously did in the session you're in right now. This basically happens when your brain cells are kind of left all over the place when you switch between tasks. So when I was doing like the English language paper, I would still be thinking about the biology session I did half an hour ago. And this is not good. You don't want to do this because it makes your deep work sessions inefficient and unproductive. Instead, the opposite of this is doing something called batching. Batching is when you merge together all of like the similar tasks together, either deep work or shallow work, and you do them all at once. So for example, I used to film like my YouTube videos on different days, but now I just have one day for filming, and I kind of like change my t-shirt to make it look like I filmed on different days. But also like now I do like complete past papers instead of like splitting up the past papers between subjects. This also, like I try to do this with like shallow work activities and stuff that won't really impact my goals, but are still like work. So for example, I check emails not throughout the day, but only one time at the end of the day. Now, like the analogy the dude in this book gives is that it's like when you're washing clothes. If you were to take one singular piece of clothing and chuck it in the washing machine and like turn it on, it's going to be so much less efficient than if you just chuck the whole, like everything in the wash at once. And this is the same kind of thing when you're doing batching, wherein you're merging together similar tasks and you're doing them all at once. So like the tip I want to give you here is like, whenever you're doing any kind of work, try and see if you're doing anything similar throughout the day or throughout the week, and try to do that together rather than like spreading it out. This also works in like in your daily routine. So I have a full video on your daily routine as well. But when you do your deep work in general, I don't think it's useful having your deep work sessions throughout the day. In my opinion, it's better to work it's better to be in like do a big chunk of revision in the morning and then leave the rest of the day to just recreational activities. And I think in the book Eat the Frog by this guy named Brian Tracy, he kind of says the same thing as well, where he's like, you have to do the hardest deep work session or like the hardest work right in the morning rather than spreading out your deep work sessions throughout the day. But yeah, the TLDR of this entire section is just like, do similar work, don't multitask at all because of attention residue. And you kind of want to do this like similar tasks, either deep work or shallow work, together at once. Tip number 2 is grand gestures and deep work. So when an author called J.K. Rowling was writing Harry Potter, so this is like a massive, if you haven't heard of Harry Potter, who hasn't? It's like a massive like wizard I haven't even read Harry Potter, I'm gonna be completely real, but like it's like this wizard book. When she was writing that book, she basically rented out like these really luxury apartments and wrote in there. And this is called a grand gesture. You're basically making it clear in your brain that the deep work you're doing right now is important. And you don't have to go and rent out a luxury apartment to go and do your work. All you need to do is just do something unusual, in a good way, of course, to make it clear to your brain that the deep work or like the work session you're doing right now is important. So for example, it could be as simple as like going to the nearest cafeteria and doing your work there for one time, because then you're signifying that like the work you're doing, you're going there for the purpose of work. It could be like rewarding yourself with new stationery, because you tell yourself that like this work is important, so because I've worked so hard, I'm rewarding myself with stationery. Any gesture that you do that's beneficial to you but kind of like unusual to your normal routine that helps with your work is called a grand gesture, and you want to kind of like incorporate this into your routine as much as possible. For example, I go to the sauna every day now if I do like a certain amount of work in the morning. So if I don't complete my deep work session in the morning, I'm not allowed to go to the sauna. I basically just reward myself with something nice at the end of the day to signify the importance of the work I'm doing. The last tip I want to really install into you is quality over quantity. This mindset that just doing a few hours of work a day, but doing them really focused and implementing the principles, of course, that I gave you to do work previously in the video, is like, it is insanely powerful when it comes to working. And I know that like a lot of cultures, especially like the Asian or like Indian culture, really value, like they really encourage people to just revise for more. So like my Indian family encourages me to revise, or encourages our like cousins to revise for like 10 hours a day for their exams, but not to like, they don't really care about the intensity of the session. It's more about the length of the hours, because that is like easier to measure, right? It's really hard for you to measure the intensity of how focused you are, but really try and shift away from this mindset of like trying to revise for long hours. Instead, what you need to do is you need to visualize yourself revising a few hours a day, not like extended periods of time, but just being really focused and just really intense in those sessions. I know I've already repeated this point previously in the video, but I just want to really like hammer this in, that like it doesn't matter how long you work, it's more about the quality over the quantity of the length of time you work. In the book, Cal Newport actually states that human beings are capped at 4 hours of deep work a day. So you literally cannot do more than 4 hours of intense work a day. So everyone who says that they're doing like 10 hours of work a day, they're either just in work mode, so they're not actually revising for 10 hours a day. They're just like thinking about the work for an extended period of time. But people who say that they're working like 10 hours a day on something, they're not doing 10 hours of deep work. They're probably doing more like 3 or 4 hours of deep work. And even that's like a skill you have to build towards. As students, we probably, like personally, I can probably only do like 2 hours of intense work before I actually need to like have some kind of recovery or some kind of break. So I really want to hammer down that like the amount of time you work for isn't really relevant in your productivity. It's more about the quality of the deep work sessions. I want to end this video by basically saying that you should take action on this like video as soon as possible. You don't need to wait to have like an accountability partner. You don't even need to wait to like make all of this stuff to implement this fully. All you need is a notebook and then just to do the work. You don't need to wait or procrastinate doing deep work any longer, because a lot of people, they're probably going to watch this video, say that they don't have an accountability partner, and then just go back to their old ways of trying to revise 5 hours a day for their upcoming exam and then stay the same. I really want this video to just change the way you view work, because it, like when I first read this book, it genuinely changed the way I viewed work. So I just want to leave this with you, that deep work is a skill that can be improved. At first, you're probably not going to stick to this as rigidly as you hope for. Over time, you're just going to get better at doing deep work, and hopefully in the future, this hasn't even happened to me, in the future, after doing this again and again, it's just going to be natural. You're not going to go back to your old bad ways of working, and you're just going to have this ingrained in your mind. I just want to say that this is a massive video and you probably need to rewatch this again and again to really get the information from this video. Personally, I try and read through deep work every so often, like every few months, just to make clear like the mindset and the principles that in this book, and you should probably do the same because it's human nature to forget some of this stuff. So yeah, just like revisit this video or like revisit this book if you can get your hands on it again and again, and you're just going to be better at working in general. That was a massive video. Hopefully going forward you're going to implement these principles in your day-to-day life. If you kind of relate to me and you're into like self-development, you're into the gym, you want to be the best student possible, you want to get the highest grades and also like do other stuff as well, consider subscribing to my YouTube channel and follow me on Instagram at shamalam.7, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.